Welcome everyone. Before I begin, can I do a quick round robin so those joining the meeting today can let everyone know who they are and their roles. What I'll do is I'll start with Gary.
Gary Ridley, Assistant Chief Officer for the Force and Chief Finance Officer for the PCC.
Joe.
Farrell, good morning, Chief Constable, Durham Police.
Paul.
Paul Gray, I'm the temporary Chief Superintendent, Head of Tasking and Coordination.
Kieran.
Morning everybody, Kieran Irving, Deputy Chief Constable.
Stephen.
Morning, Steve Ball, Head of Roads and Armed Policing for Durham Police.
Nicola.
Good morning, Nicola Foreman.
Kevin.
Good morning, I'm Kevin Salt, I'm an Inspector in the Strategic Roads Police and Inspector role.
Sweetie.
Sweetie Sahani, Head of Private Office for the Durham Police and Crime Commissioner's Office.
Stephen Ball.
Steve's introduced himself.
Oh, sorry, I was obviously looking for Stephen White.
Good morning, Steve White. I'm the Chief Executive for the Durham Police and Crime Commissioner.
Vicky.
Hi, I'm Vicky Booth. I'm Community Engagement Officer for Joy's office.
Have I covered everybody? Put your hand up if I haven't. Brilliant. Okay. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Chief Constable Jo Farrell and members of her senior team for joining me today to participate in this important public accountability meeting about illegally driven off-road bikes. The focus of this meeting will be around dangerous, illegal and antisocial use of off-road bikes and motorcycles. The illegal and antisocial use of off-road bikes and motorcycles is a perennial problem across the whole of County Durham and Darlington, and these concerns are regularly brought to my attention by angry local residents and elected members at numerous community and public meetings I have attended. Quad bikes and motorcycles are cutting up and damaging too many of our community spaces, which cost a fortune to repair and target harden. The reckless riders have no thought to the damage they can cause and often destroy land and devastate residents' efforts to maintain beautiful community spaces. So it's not surprising that as Police and Crime Commissioner, dealing with this off-road bike vandalism is one of my key priorities in my police and crime plan. I will continue to work with Durham Constabulary and partners to tackle the menace of off-road bikes by continuing to invest in Operation Endurance so that enforcement action can be taken against illegal and antisocial use of off-road vehicles. I will provide them with the resources necessary to catch these offenders and confiscate illegally driven off-road bikes, along with our partner support. When their intelligence identifies who they are, I will support the police in prosecuting offenders and seizing and destroying their vehicles. Residents regularly share pictures and videos with me. They really highlight the costly trail of damage and destructions that have scarred too many community spaces. It's happening to communities across County Durham and Darlington, and it must be stopped and challenged. Not only are these bikes a nuisance to law-abiding members of the public, many of the bikes are dangerous and in unroadworthy condition. The residents and are really concerned about these bikes and the riders of these bikes, many of whom do not wear the correct safety gear and are not only putting themselves at risk by riding the way they do, but they are putting other people at risk too. Over the last few weeks, in giving my ongoing commitment to being open, honest and transparent in conducting my duties, I have given the residents of County Durham and Darlington the opportunity to put forward any questions and comments to me about their concerns about illegally and driven and antisocial use of off-road motorcycles in their communities. And I'm really pleased to say that I've had a really good response to this public consultation, which has included very useful comments as well as questions residents would like Durham Constabulary to respond to in more detail. A full recording of this meeting, including all questions and answers, will be uploaded on YouTube after this meeting and will be made available to all the public and partner agencies. Until recently, accountability meetings where the PCC holds the Chief Constable and the force to account for policing in the area have not been open to the public or recorded. But as your PCC, I want to address the current situation by being more open, accountable and transparent in the delivery of my duties and decision making. The recorded meetings enable residents to see how the accountability process works and the role the PCC plays in delivering an efficient and effective police service by scrutinising the performance of the force and ensuring it is responsible to the needs of residents of County Durham and Darlington. I trust this new progressive approach will enable me to give residents the opportunity to raise what matters most to them so I can hold the Chief Constable to account on their behalf and to make County Durham and Darlington safer, stronger and more resilient to crime and antisocial behaviour. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who's provided questions for today, and for all those people who have provided a name and address with the question. I will ensure that my office provides you with a personal response on my behalf. It will be useful for me to talk through the format of who's in attendance today, the accountability meeting. In a few minutes, I will invite the Chief Constable, Joe Farrell, to say a few words and provide some operational context and background information onto this subject. There's now going to be a half-hour presentation, which is going to be delivered after Joe speaks by PC Nicola Bowman, Casualty Reduction Coordinator, and Inspector Kevin Salter, Strategic Roads Policing Unit. Also in attendance is Superintendent Ball, who's Head of Roads and Armed Police Unit, who will be present during the duration of this meeting to answer some of the questions. Following the presentation, I will read out a selection of questions and direct them to the Chief Constable and her team to provide responses. It was noted that some of the questions received in my office had a similar theme, so these have been grouped together and paraphrased and will hopefully answer the most common concerns and queries residents have. This meeting is expected to last about 90 minutes, and I really hope that members of the public find the content of the presentation useful and assist them in having a better understanding about how I will continue to hold the force to account to address local policing issues and to ensure Durham Constabulary is efficient and effective police force. I now would like to hand over to the Chief Constable, Joe Farrell, who would like to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning to everybody. My executive team are joined today by colleagues from Roads Policing Casualty Reduction, and we will describe in detail to you the operational response to the issue of antisocial behaviour linked to off-road motorcycles. And we welcome the opportunity to talk in detail today in relation to this issue. What we're going to describe to you is our operational response that has been in the making, if you like, for many years. We've taken and do take a problem-solving approach to these types of issues and continually evolve our response over time, drawing in partners that can assist in tackling the issue. I'm hoping that the presentation and our detailed response in relation to the questions will reassure people that this is a priority for across Durham and Darlington, and that there is a coordinated approach from a number of areas of policing, including the initial contact through our communications room, our roads policing team, our neighbourhood teams, and our response officers. And it gives us the opportunity to showcase this work that has been subject of awards of recognition on a national basis, and will highlight to you that colleagues from across the country approach Durham Police in order to understand our approach and use this good practice. We'll also describe to you the role that the public can play in supporting us and helping us tackle this issue that does have a negative impact on people's lives. So I'm going to pass over now to Nicola Bowman, Head of the Casualty Reduction Unit, who will describe to you in detail our response to off-road motorcycles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mel. Yes, good morning. I'm now going to share my screen and hopefully get the presentation on here for you. So please bear with me a moment while I get that sorted. Okay. Can you all see it? Yeah, fantastic, thank you. So Operation Endurance by Durham Constabulary. This is a multi-agency approach to tackling the antisocial use of motorbikes, quads and motorised vehicles. We first came up with this idea in around 2017 to look at how else we could tackle this issue. It was deemed that obviously we needed to think about how differently we could look at it. So we incorporated the help of quite a lot of our different partner agencies to pull together everything that we all had to offer to bring about the best solution to this issue. It is a force-wide coordinated response, so everybody within Durham Constabulary and our partner agencies have the same access to the same information and the same tools to use to deal with this issue. And it also allows them to look at things on an individual basis for local areas, so they can look at what's causing the problems to them in their particular area. So we provide officers with tactics and the confidence to deal effectively with the problem in the form of a toolkit. And what this provides everybody with is the same information to utilise for their own location, their own areas. And ultimately, this looks at different aspects to do with our partners, with housing, with how to deal with young people, and what the enforcement options are. So what is antisocial use? Section 59 of the Police Reform Act 2002 defines antisocial use as use of a vehicle in a manner which is careless or inconsiderate, without lawful authority, and in a manner which is causing, likely to cause, or has been causing alarm, distress or annoyance to members of the public. So what does this look like? This looks like things such as motorbikes and quads riding across public play areas or any public area that members of the public have access to. Causing damage to property such as grass or fences, fences to gain entry to fields, to areas to get their bikes and quads into these areas. So not only is this antisocial use, this is also a form of criminal damage, which we will look at separately as an offence. Noise nuisance. Now, part of the legislation does say that if an individual has permission to ride on private land, they can do so. And yes, this is correct. However, if by doing that, there is noise nuisance caused by that vehicle being ridden on private land, then we can still look at trying to solve that issue and reduce the noise that is caused by that bike. We do incorporate our partners into this. Our environmental agency partners within the local authority can work with the landowner to try and form some different options to reduce the noise which can be caused and which is heard by local residents, or if there's no options to reduce that, to actually put a stop to them being able to use that private land. All of the antisocial use does pose potential risks to members of the public and also the riders themselves. Obviously, members of the public have an access to public land. If a bike is riding around there erratically at speed, you've got young children, you've got animals running around, obviously the risk there is quite evident. Every time somebody uses one of these bikes or quads in a public area, they are committing road-related offences, and there are a different number of road-related offences that are being committed. Under the Road Traffic Act 1998, a couple of examples of those offences include driving otherwise in accordance with a licence. So that would include things like no insurance, no driving licence, causing criminal damage to the property, to grassed areas, to fences to gain access, as we've already discussed. But one of the other offences that have been caused, and we often see this ourselves quite a lot, is people riding around just wearing balaclavas, not wearing helmets, not wearing the appropriate safety gear, as well as being a risk and a danger to individuals. This is also actually an offence. All of the range of offences that can be committed and are being committed under the Road Traffic Act 1988 and other offences are actually detailed in the toolkit. So all officers have full range and the full idea of which offences are being committed and how to deal with that. There are a lot of consequences again associated with this. So if you have a young person who doesn't yet have a driving licence but is being reported for driving offences, they will be put before the court and they can and will receive fixed penalty points on a non-existent driving licence. They may also find themselves having disqualification from driving. So before they're legally able to apply for a driving licence or even apply to have driving lessons, they are already facing disqualifications and fixed penalty fines. Once a person does become of age where they can actually look to drive themselves, that has a massive implication on insurance quotes. So when they do come to be wanting to learn to drive, the cost of insurance is extremely high, and that could also have a knock-on effect if it comes to looking for jobs, going to college, or providing transport for members of their own family. Other consequences are obviously the risks that they pose to themselves and others. Not only could they risk harming themselves and causing themselves injuries, but they could also face the consequence of killing themselves or somebody else. That is something that that individual is going to have to live with for the rest of their lives. It's more than just a police issue though. It has always just been seen as an antisocial behaviour issue, but actually it's not. As we've covered, you see there is a massive range of offences that are being committed whenever anybody takes to the roads with these bikes. By working with our partner agencies and bringing other people on board under the Operation Endurance umbrella, it increases the range of legislation procedures that we do have available to us to utilise to actually tackle this issue. Our partner agencies sometimes have their own issues and their own legislation to follow, such as housing. They can look at the tenancy aspect. Environmental agency, they can look at the noise nuisance caused. So by implementing the use and the partnership working, we can increase the legislation and procedures that we can use as a force. It gives us a wider range of intelligence gathering opportunities as well. So whereby as police officers, PCSOs, we are out there, we're dealing with members of the community, we're dealing with members of the public and dealing with the offenders. We can gather different intelligence. Our partners are also out there doing the same thing. So whereby we gather certain aspects of intelligence, we do have people who are more inclined to report things to the housing provider, report things to people who go into their homes to carry out repairs. They may, during conversations, feel more comfortable discussing these incidents with them, and they can then report that back to us, and together we can put together a bigger picture. The jigsaw puzzle pieces fit together nicely, and as partner agencies, we can actually tackle this head on. It gives us greater opportunities for target hardening. As a police force, there are certain things we can do to target hardening. We can look at engineering, we can look at environmental aspects, but working with our partners, we can then look at implementing and installing barriers, installing different big rocks which can stop access to certain areas. But again, by working with our partners on this target hardening, we also need to make sure that we comply with the Disability Discrimination Act, which ultimately gives all members of the public the continued right to access the areas they are looking at, and they have the right to access and shouldn't be put off because people go there to ride off-road bikes and quads. When it comes to target hardening as well, we can go ahead and we can get these barriers put in place, but what we also need to look at is the financial aspect of installing, the financial aspect of maintenance, and more importantly, the financial aspect when it comes to the repair. We do know that barriers are put in place. We do know that certain individuals will remove these barriers or damage these barriers to continue gaining access. So therefore, we need to make sure that we are sustainable, we keep those barriers in place to allow members of the public to access these areas and enjoy these areas that we have, while not allowing these members of the public who decide to ride bikes to continue to cause these problems. This list here is by no means exhaustive, but these are just an example of some of the agencies that we do work with regularly. Durham County Council and Darlington Borough Council, the many different departments within those local authorities, provide us with valuable assistance on a daily basis. County Durham and Darlington Fire Service, again, a valuable member and a valuable partner to us. We can look at dealing with any potential fueling issues, any potential issues with fuel stations. And we are looking to re-implement Garage Watch, which again the fire service and the trade standards teams have a huge focus on as well. National Trust in the countryside ranges, and again we find that areas of natural beauty, the Natural Heritage Centre, the National Trust look after these places, but we do have damage caused by bikes and quads being ridden in those areas. Housing providers provide us with some valuable support. When we do identify riders and individuals or households and locations, then we can visit with housing providers who can then potentially provide warnings and breach of tenancy for these individuals who continue to use bikes and quads from that area. Our railways and our railway lines in the areas around it. We work very closely with them to share information, to share intelligence, and to provide support and advice. Trading standards and fuel licensing have a key role to play in this. If we can look to reduce the ability to buy fuels, we have our fuel licensing teams working with us, then ultimately we can make a massive difference. But ultimately the community, you are a partner and we do work with you every single day. We would love more information coming in from you. We work on the information that you do provide to us, and we do and will feed back more to you to let you know what we've done with that information. So please continue that coming into us. As part of our multi-agency strategies, what we do look at as a partnership is working together towards achieving objectives. We have to set out our objectives because otherwise we don't know what we're working towards. And ultimately we're all working towards the same objective, reducing the impact and the issues caused by the nuisance of off-road motorbikes and quads. From a multi-agency aspect as well from the different partners, it also allows us to focus on localised problems and offenders. So whereby we have partners working across County Durham and Darlington, we also have some focused partners working within local neighbourhood teams and within local areas. So where we identify that some areas have more issues caused by motorbikes and quads, it allows that particular area to look at what partners in their area can provide more intense help and support. It also helps us look at offenders causing issues in an area. So you do have some offenders who are prolific and who have been offending for quite some time. So by utilising the Up Endurance Toolkit, utilising the partner agencies that we have available and the knowledge and skills that we've instilled in our colleagues, we can look at actually ways to deal with these particular offenders. Everything we do as a force, everything our partners do has to be appropriate and proportionate. So whereby you do have some offenders who it may be the first time that they've come to our attention. So we will look at obviously dealing with those offenders, but the way we deal with that will be different to how we would deal with more prolific offenders, how we would deal with those who've been committing offences as well as criminal offences in a proportionate manner. Everything we do has to be achievable. What is the point of setting out our objectives if we can't achieve them and we're setting ourselves and other people up to fail? That is not what we're here to do. It has to be achievable. I just want to give you a little bit of an insight into a couple of the figures that we can look at here. You can see that the graph on the left-hand side shows the different neighbourhood policing teams across the County Durham and Darlington area for the last 5 years and the number of incidents that have been reported for those areas alone. You can see that the three highlighted areas, Darlington, Peatley and Newton Aycliffe, have systematically been higher than everywhere else across the county. Ultimately, these three areas have shared the highest three rankings for the last 5 years. So therefore, the issues that are raised in those areas, as we've previously touched on, can actually be dealt with on a more localised area as well as across the board. You see though at the end you've got Barnard Castle who has very few incidents. How they deal with their issues in Barnard Castle will be very different to how Darlington, Peatley and Newton Aycliffe will deal with theirs, while yet still using the same information and tools that are available under Up Endurance. The reported incidents on the right hand side that you can see there, the dark blue area for 2020 shows that these were the number of incidents reported into our incident control room during that period of time. There were 4,481 incidents across 2020. Up until the 27th of October 2021, there were 2,944 incidents reported into the control room. Now, although that doesn't show the full year, we will be reviewing that at the end of this year as well to show exactly how that does tally up. But you can see even at that point, with 2 months left to go, there were 1,837 less incidents reported into the control room. These charts here, the table on the left-hand side, which gives you a little bit more detailed insight into the numbers of incidents in those local areas, do show a bit of a fluctuation during the 2019-20 period. Now, what we did find is, and with everything else in the country, we were suffering a pandemic. We did actually have an impact on off-road bike reports, off-road bike usage during that period as well. And what we identified with that is during that period, we had a number of people obviously furloughed from work, working from home, who were at home, and they did see more of an impact on the area. They did see more of these bikes being ridden, whereby they would normally have been at work, would normally not have potentially seen these bikes if indeed this incident was taking place during that time period. Ultimately, that gave them the opportunity to identify that and report that into us in our control room to give us the opportunity to deal with that. And what we also found was when dealing with some of these riders, they were using this as a form of exercise or as an excuse as a form of exercise. So whereby they were at home as well, they didn't have other things that they were doing, so they went out on the bikes and used it as a form of exercise. On the right-hand side there, that chart shows the 5-year period, just detailing the fluctuation in easy to see chart to show the Newton, Aycliffe, Peatley and Darlington areas, just to give you a visual of how that has fluctuated over the time period. So how can you report things into us and to other people when it comes to this topic? If the incident is ongoing, obviously we do have a facility there for you to call 101. That will get you through to our control room, and that will give you the facility to speak to one of our control room call handlers. You'll be able to report the incident, give full details of the location, the time it's happened, and we would also ask you to provide information on the rider, the identification of the bike, clothing, direction of travel. As much information as you can give us, the more information that gives us to go on. So when we do attend, we are able to find and know what we're actually looking for. If we have a direction of travel, that will also help with us when we're doing our inquiries. An alternative option is live chat. Again, that still gets you through to one of our call handlers in the control room, but that is done on a web-based platform via the internet. So you can log on through our website and you can interact with a call handler in the same way. You can also report this matter to local authorities. Although there are some criminal aspects attached to it, it is still deemed as an antisocial matter. Local authorities have a reporting mechanism for antisocial behaviour. So your local authority will have a reporting method, contact telephone details on their website. So please feel free to contact them that way. As I've already mentioned previously, we do work in partnership with the local authorities. So this information will be shared with the police and we will work together to tackle this issue. If the issue is not ongoing and you are not seeing an incident happening, then you can get in contact with your local neighbourhood contact teams. Ultimately, a lot of people do have good relationships with the local beat teams, so they will already know who their beat officer and PCSO is. If you don't know this, then you can go onto our website. Joint Constabulary's website is fully updated with who the local officers are for your area. All of the beat teams also have an email address where you can send information to as well. So if you don't have that information already, please go onto Joint Constabulary's website and you can find that information and share it that way. Any intelligence, any images, any pictures, anything you deem is important that we need to know, please do share that. Crime Stoppers also work with us. They will take Operation Endurance reports. 0800 555 111 is their number. It's free phone and you can remain completely anonymous. We understand why people don't want to share their details and we understand why people are not happy to give information. But please rest assured, any reports you make via Crime Stoppers are anonymous, but they will share that information with us. Joint Constabulary also have the Keep in the Know system, which again, it's a reporting and an information sharing mechanism. Again, if you haven't already signed up to that, please go onto Durham Constabulary's website or speak to one of your members of your local policing team and they will be able to help you do this. This gives you the opportunity to find out what's happening in your local area. It can also give you information about what's happening across Durham Constabulary, but it also breaks it down into your local area. So it does tell you information about what's happening for you in your area. And you can also share information in with us via the same mechanism. So what can be done? The reporting incidents is crucial. If you are able to report incidents to us, that gives us an identification of the locations, the times and the dates. And for us to be able to build up an operation endurance picture, we need to know where these incidents are happening. By not reporting, it seems that the incidents are not happening. Even though you may see them, you may know that they are happening. If they're not reported to us, we don't know they're happening. So we can't do anything about that. Provide any intelligence to us. Any CCTV footage or images that you may have, please provide that. Again, that helps us build up the picture. What we may do is we work with our partners and we will share that intelligence across. It may be that they have other forms of intelligence from other places, and between us, we put these pieces of intelligence together and we will do something about it. If you are happy to provide statements to us, then ultimately that does go a long way to supporting enforcement action. We will take action against people. It may take a little bit longer to find the evidence that we need, but we will be able to take enforcement action against people for committing criminal offences. But if you do provide statements to us, that will allow us to do that in a more timely manner. We do, however, understand again people are maybe reluctant to do so, as they may have had involvement with people who are causing these issues in the local area. They may be intimidated by people, but please do discuss the option of statements with us. Don't just rule it out. It may be something we can do to make that matter and that situation more manageable to help everybody out and still provide that information to us. Durham Constabulary do have drones available and they are an excellent tool for intelligence gathering and for evidence gathering. But what we've also got to take into account is, just like everybody else, Durham Constabulary have got to follow certain legislation, and we are governed by the Civil Aviation Authority regulations. We do have a team in place within Durham Constabulary who do manage the drones, and we are conscious that we can use them, but we have to be careful where we use them, where we take them off from. But we have a team that we do discuss this with whenever we do any operation endurance deployments. So again, that is something that we have been asked in the past, and it is an option that we can utilise. So what next? Well, having been a PCSO for quite a number of years, I've personally used all of these options, and I have found that they have been extremely useful in dealing with these issues. So Section 59 warnings are one of our starting points, and what this does, when somebody is identified as utilising or using a bike or a quad in an antisocial manner, we are able to issue them with a Section 59 warning notice. Now what this does, this puts restrictions on place on an individual, not the vehicle, not the bike, on an individual, and that can last 12 months. Now what this means is that should that individual be caught again using a bike or a quad, or in fact any vehicle, whether it belongs to them or not, if they are caught within that 12-month period, we will seize that vehicle. Now what happens is after the first warning, it does have to be recorded on the Force's antisocial behaviour register. So what you might see is engage with an individual, handing them a piece of paper, which is one of these Section 59 warnings, and allowing them to take the bikes away. That's because this is the first warning. We can't seize it until they've had at least that first warning. We also utilise community protection warnings, community protection notices. Now, these tend to be sort of a follow-on stage, and what we utilise these for is if we have somebody who's a little bit more prolific, or they've been caught more than once and they're not adhered to the warnings that have been issued. So if we've got more prolific offenders, then we can go down this route, and this will put further restrictions in place on an individual or indeed on a household. And what we use these for, these are under the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act 2014. We impose stricter restrictions on an individual. And if we find that an individual is using a bike in association with another person, and they only ever are reported using it when they're with that person, one of these restrictions we can put in place is to actually stop them associating with that individual. due to the manner of behaviour that they cause when they are together. If we give Joe Bloggs a community protection warning at 10 o'clock this morning, they then continue to carry on with this behaviour, and we see them using an off-road bike in the same manner at 2 o'clock this afternoon, then we can go straight ahead and give them formal notice. We don't have to have a time period in between to give them a time to comply. If they continue to ignore the warnings that have been given, we can go ahead and issue that straight away. Obviously, we do have to have the evidence, and we do have to ensure that all of the warnings have been adhered to and everything's in place that we need to be there. But we can go ahead and utilise these very, very quickly. Whenever we've issued any Section 59 warnings, seized any motorbikes, had any involvement with community protection warnings or notices, involvement with individuals, we do inform other partners. So our housing colleagues are notified straight away as well, and they are also given a copy of the warnings and the notices. What this allows us to do is to visit with the housing provider and to discuss with the householder, whether it be the parent or the actual tenant, to let them know that they've been caught and it will not be accepted, it will not be tolerated, and they will potentially get a tenancy warning about this behaviour. Should that continue, obviously we would look down the route of potentially further action against that tenant. As we've already mentioned, we would be looking at driving offences. Every time a bike is taken to the roads without the relevant, without being road legal, without the relevant paperwork and legislation and documentation, they are committing driving offences. Criminal behaviour orders have always been used historically for crimes, and as we've already mentioned, these driving offences are crimes. So if we have a prolific offender who is continuing, despite all the intervention that we put in place, despite all the warnings that we put in place, despite the tenancy action that we're putting in place, we could look at going to court on the back of some of these driving offences and look at having a criminal behaviour order imposed on the individual. That would put even stricter regulations in place on that individual to stop them doing certain activities. If this is breached, this would actually carry a potential custodial sentence. So as you can see, as we're going through, we do have options there for things to increase in severity. Closure orders, you may have seen those on the news and on our social media. We've often used closure orders to close down drug houses and other things such as that. But we have actually utilised a closure order for the use of antisocial use of motorbikes and quads with prolific offenders who we've gone through the other routes for, who are not adhering to the warnings. So closure orders are actually available for us to use, and we have used them and will continue to do so. What this means is that we could potentially evict people from their house for a period of at least 3 months. This would eradicate the issues from that household, from that location, for that time period. But what this also brings is the additional power for the housing authority and the housing providers to then go for eviction, to permanently remove them from that house. So again, the stricter the imposition, then the more we can actually do. Whenever we see or have reports or catch any young people on bikes, we always put in our safeguarding reports. If a young person is riding a motorbike, ultimately you've got huge risks there. You've got people who are not trained, never had a lesson on riding motorbikes. They're not potentially strong enough to ride motorbikes. These are children who are riding around on high-powered vehicles without any training, without any safety equipment. So the risk that this poses is immense. If they see a police officer responding to an incident, they won't stick around to speak to you. They will take off, and that again increases the risk that is posed to a young person. We will put these reports in place that will go through social services departments and other health departments. So if you've got a family who are already working with social services, that again will bring a further knock to your door to ask you, what are you thinking, what are you doing? And we could also look at them reporting parents for child neglect. So this has a massive impact. When we do receive the social media, the footage and the information and intelligence in from yourselves, if we have footage and we have CCTV footage, we would circulate that around our teams and around our partners to identify individuals within that footage. If we can't identify them internally, then we will post that on social media We do want to know who these people are. As much as we want to put these things in place and enforce what we can do and stop these people doing it, we want to protect them at the same time. So by finding out who they are, we can explore the reasons behind them using these bikes. We can explore what it is they're doing, and we can put some intervention work in with them, and we can hopefully try to stop them causing themselves or anybody else any further harm. As it's been alluded to, this Operation Endurance is now being known countrywide. So we are getting regular responses from other police forces who want us to share with them the principles of Operation Endurance, and we are more than happy to do that. We are finding that we are being very effective in what we do. We are looking to push that out as far as possible, and if other police forces want to take that on board, then we will happily share that. We have provided guidance. We will be allowing them to adopt our principles, and we will be supporting them in taking this forward so they can hopefully make the same difference in their areas. We do have a motorbike section, and that motorbike section is very valuable, but it's no longer the first option. It used to be, whenever we had any reports of incidents of off-road bikes in an area, let's get bike section to come over, show some presence, deal with the situation. Well, yes, that's great. It does work. Bike section are crucial. However, it was a very short-lived success. It would last a day or so, but then the problem would resurface, and we'd end up finding ourselves back at square one, which is why Operation Endurance, the partnership work and the work across our response teams, our neighbourhood teams, our road policing teams is absolutely crucial to put in the background work before bike section play their part. We need to know who these offenders are. We need to know where the offences are taking place. We need to know what our partners know. We need to know how our partners can help us. We need to have all this information together to put in some aspects of sustainability. We will get bike section across once we've got this information. We'll put an operation together, and we will go out in force as a team, as partners, and we'll get everybody involved, including yourselves as a community, to give us that information, to come along and to help us provide that activity. But that sustainable approach needs to be there. What we're going to do once we've stopped individuals after this, we're going to need to know that we've got the things in place that we need to deal with this. So when it comes to looking at, is the rider who's been stopped, are they newly known to us, or are they a prolific offender? If so, which way are we going to deal with that? We need to know what our options are, and we need to know that that toolkit is there for us to be able to utilise. We work very closely together, myself and Inspector Kev Salter, as he is the inspector for bike section. So, Kev, is there anything else you'd like to add on the end of that in relation to bike section?
No, thank you, Nicola. It's probably worth pointing out that due to the timescales, we've only literally been able to skim the surface there of what actually goes on with Operation Endurance behind the scenes. So hopefully throughout today's process, we'll be able to tell you a little bit more. The work that does go on is very good. It's fantastic, and we are very proud. And as it's been said, other forces are continuing asking us how we actually do things in this area. It also won the problem solving category in the National Tilly Awards, and we are finalists in the Goldstein Awards, which is happening in America, and the winners are to be announced like sort of early 2022, so fingers crossed.
Thank you. Nicola, thank you so much for your presentation. It was really comprehensive and detailed. And I know residents of County Durham and towns, parish and partners will find extremely insightful and informative. I know I will be encouraging lots of people as we go to these public meetings to really go and visit YouTube and listen to this excellent resource that highlights what the force, residents and partners can do to address illegally driven off-road bikes. And as Kev said, that it's absolutely a really testament to the work and the problem-solving approach that you're doing, that we haven't just sort of won the Tilly Awards and been shortlisted to go for an international award. And I think that's down to the work that obviously the partners, yourself, but also most important is the intelligence that's coming from the residents that enable you to do what you're doing. But I think setting out what you've done in that presentation, I can't tell you how valuable that will be to me as the Police and Crime Commissioner, to encourage people to visit that and to find out more about what Durham Constabulary and the partners are doing to address the illegally driven off-road bikes, but also what they can do to help us in that partnership approach. So I'm now going to go through to the questions. We've got about 10 questions and we'll go through them individually. So the first question from the members of the public is, why do those individuals who offend, the offenders, get their bikes back once the police have seized them? And what's the process around this? And I'm going to put this question to Inspector Salter. Okay, thank you. It's obviously frustrating. It's frustrating and probably one of the biggest things that we do get asked. It's frustrating for us as we put a lot of work in the background to try and recover these bikes, and we can see why it'd be frustrating for members of the public. Personally, I would like to see them all go to the crusher and be scrapped, and I'm sure that's reiterated across my colleagues. But unfortunately, I don't make the legislation. We're obviously bound by the powers and procedures. When we seize a bike, it's normally around £150 seizure fee and then £10 a day storage. So on average, people are paying around £200 to get them back. 60% of the bikes that we do seize go unreclaimed and sit in the pound, and they're not reclaimed within that 28 days. And that's probably down to the fact that they're not worth the £200. But these are the ones that we want off the streets. The ones that are worth nothing and just passed from pillar to post in the community, the ones that are driven dangerously because nobody cares about them. We do have other powers which we look at on a day-to-day basis to make it more difficult for people to get the bikes back, because we understand the frustrations and the offenders at the end of the day know it's wrong. So we have got other powers, and an example of that is Operation Takeaway, whereby once we seize the bike under that power, the offender's got to prove that they've got insurance and a driving licence to be able to get that back. Now, to get a driving licence, they're going to have to go through a series of tests to ride a motorbike. To get insurance, they've got to make sure that the bike is roadworthy and road registered, which is extremely difficult to do. So we have got other ways and means that we do use through Operation Endurance. Please remember that seizure is only one very small part in the process. We do use lots of powers, as Nicola sort of alluded to, with our partners and working together. And one small example is working with Darlton Borough Council not so long ago, where we seized a quad bike. The occupant of the house at the time wasn't happy with the seizing of that quad bike. They were arrested at I think for public order offences. But the following day, working in partnership with us and under Operation Endurance, the council went round and served them a warning notice under the tenancy agreement because they'd been riding the bike antisocially and it affected the tenancy agreement. If you speak to them now, they'll say that the actual warning from the council, the fear of losing the house, affected them probably more so than what the arrest did or what the actual seizure of the bike. So it is just one small part. We're also looking at the 60% of bikes that do stay in the pound, what we do with them. So rather than them going off to auction and the risk of them getting back out there in the hands of similar types of people, we're looking at a process, well, it's still early stages, but we're looking at putting a process in place to prevent that from happening, to ensure that they go and get scrapped and get removed from the streets. Thank you very much for that, and I appreciate it. It's good to share some of the frustrations that you operating in relation to existing legislation. But obviously, as a politician working closely with the chief, I think there's some challenges there that we can look to lobby to address some of those changes that will make the difference to you on the ground. And I think you've quite highlighted quite rightly it's about appropriate how we use our tools and powers between the constabulary, the county council and our housing providers. And sometimes there's other ways, as you give there a really good example of how tenancy breaches can be very, very effective in addressing some of the behaviour and the storage of the off-road bikes and addressing those who are riding them. So I think that's a really good insight, because I think it is a frustration for many people that they can't understand what happens. But I also welcome the approach that you're doing in relation to try and find ways to address some of the issues that puts the bikes back on the road. So I think there's another one for you, Inspector Salter. So one of the concerns is that by the time the police arrive at the scene, when they turn up, more often than not, the bikes have gone. So sometimes, quite rightly, the public feel that the force, how they feel is that they're not taking it seriously. However, I think you need to explain what can be done about this.
Well, first of all, I can see the frustrations from members of the public if they don't understand our processes and procedures with Operation Endurance. However, please rest assured that a lot of work goes on in the background, and we do take it very seriously, as you've probably gathered so far. I'll try and explain just a scenario from a member of the public's point of view. You may call 101. That call will be graded. It'll sit in our job queuing system, and depend on the nature, will depend on how and how quickly we get there, and depend on what's happening in the area. We may come right away. We may be slightly delayed due to more higher risk incidents. As we all know, bikes only stay in one place for a very short space of time. So when we arrive, one or two things going to happen. One, we'll do an area search, and we'll look for the bike, trying to look to identify them or get any intelligence. If they're gone, then that's when we'll probably do an area search and drive away. And from a member of the public's point of view, they'll probably think, well, what was the point in that? What was the point in making that call? Which I do get, but just please bear with me. The second scenario would be that we would arrive, we would see the off-road bike. In my experience, they're not going to come over for a chat and try and speak with us. They're going to make off. They're going to take unnecessary risk, and this is where it gets risky. Obviously, the public nearby are going to be at risk. The children nearby playing in the fields are going to be at risk, and more often not, the actual rider is a child. So the last thing that we want as an organisation and as a parent, or is for this to end in any sort of catastrophic or fatal incident or cause injuries to anybody. We do have a pursuit policy in Durham Police, and we will be guided by that. But ultimately, unless the circumstances dictate, we won't be taking significant risks to pursue these people. How we get our results has already been discussed. It's through post-incident working and de-picking the incident logs for intelligence, and utilising the intelligence and our powers to search the garages and sheds slow time. Given those early morning wake-up knocks and getting the bikes back when they're back in the sheds and the garages, it's the safer option. But trust me, it works. It's how we get our results. So don't think that your call's wasted when you call us and you see us turn up and then drive away. A lot of work happens behind the scenes. We will turn up and try and identify the suspects ourselves and show presence and a reassurance. But to help us, as again Nicola's already discussed, please look for anything distinctive when you see these people riding the bikes, anything that's going to make them stand out, rather than us getting a report of a young male on an off-road bike wearing dark clothing. Please, if there's anything that stands out, look for that. So is there a registration plate displayed? Are they wearing any unusual clothing? Is there any stickers on the bike that stands out? This is how we get our results post-incident and work in slow time. It's the safest option, and it works.
Thank you for that. And I think that's absolutely, from a public perception, sometimes they say perception is reality, but I think what you've said there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to take the public's reports very, very seriously. And I know that through either the neighbourhood teams or Operation Endurance as well, that you do very regularly promote what you've done and what action has been taken, and really how important the people ringing in leads to enforcement action taken against these riders. So I think it's for myself and the comms side of it to get that information out, because I think sometimes the public aren't aware of what happens, and I think you've just outlined that in quite a succinct way of how a call is operated. So they might not see anything, and sometimes if they don't see it, they think nothing's happening. But I think that's the reassurance that you've given me for answering that particular question. Also, Inspector Salter, I think there's I've had a question from a local parish council who tells me that this issue is continually discussed and has been taken up with their local policing teams, neighbourhood policing teams. Their question is, what and how much can we as the public do to get involved and assist the police with this issue? Okay, well, first of all, intelligence, as you've heard us discuss, is
very important to us and is how we achieve results. So as a parish councillor, please use your position within the local community to speak with the residents and members of the public. They may be more inclined to speak to you and may feel more comfortable than reporting it to us. Again, members of the public, if you've got vital information, you know who's riding them, potentially where they're being kept, then please feed that information back to us. It's how we work. So intelligence is a big thing. Please remember, as I keep reiterating, anything that does stand out, please let us know about it. Secondly, safety messages. We've got continuous safety messages going out there, and obviously we just had a Christmas campaign that you yourself were part of, ma'am, with regards to advising parents of the legislation and law around buying these bikes for Christmas. But anything you do see from us safety messages wise, let's get it out there and share it on any social media sites. Let's discuss it in meetings if you've got the opportunity, and let's discuss it with our friends and family and make it almost socially unacceptable to have one of these bikes. You've heard Nicola talk about keeping the know. That's very important to us. So if you're not signed up for that already, I encourage you to do so. It's a way that we can share information together and spread them important safety messages. Funding is another thing which we're always looking for different initiatives that we've got ongoing. At the moment, we are trialling the Section 59 warning notice signs. I'll briefly try and explain that. So where you've heard Nicola talk about we have to give 2 warnings within a 12 months period, these signs would technically be the first warning. The warning signs will be placed in problematic locations where we've got issues with off-road bikes, and as soon as somebody enters that land, that is the first warning done. So if we turn up and we only have to see them once, we can then go straight to seizure, or if they make off from us and we know who they are, then we can go straight and use our powers of entry under the Police Reform Act. So that's just one small thing that we're looking at the costings for, so we will try and get that costings out. And again, please speak to your local neighbourhood teams about that, or money that you may have for any sort of target hardening in the future. And lastly, probably any ideas. I'm sure everybody will say Durham Constabulary, we're continuously trying to improve. We're trying to get better in what we do. We don't think we know it all. So please, any ideas or thoughts that you may have, then please feed them back into your local neighbourhood teams.
Thank you for that, Inspector Salter. I think, from my perspective, I think the biggest thing that the residents can do to assist you is to report it in. As you said, Nicola's mentioned about the Crime Stoppers keeping, either the neighbourhood team or ringing 101. I did ask the question, when I saw some of these great seizures and how you'd find things in lockups, you think, how on earth did you find that? How were we able to pick those bikes up out of the community and make a difference? And the answer is always, it's good into community intelligence. So we have to get a way to get from the public to say, what's the point of ringing in because I don't see a response, which isn't true in certain cases, because as you've said in the previous question, there is a lot of work goes on, but without that intelligence coming in, it doesn't give us the data and it doesn't allow us to put the resources to areas of risk. So collectively, we do need to get that information in to start with, and I think I appreciate you highlighting in the know, and that's something that myself and the team, and I know with the constabulary and all the officers there, we're very, very keen to get that done, and again, very, very grateful for the partners, because again, we've only got a limited amount of resources, and if people can come together to solve a problem in their local area and collectively with funding help you address it, I think that's very, very welcome. And I also looking at innovation with the Section 59, I think again from the public's perception, they do get frustrated when we give them a warning and they think, well, how long is it going to take? So even just to try and you responding to what the public are saying to you by trying new ways and new methods to take these bikes up very proactively. So thank you very much for that response. The next question I'm going to put to Superintendent Ball. This question is from, says, I work for Durham Heritage Coast Partnership that aims to protect and enhance our coast. We appreciate the work of Durham Constabulary and neighbourhood police forces. However, antisocial behaviour related to off-road bikes is a national issue. Is the force able to instigate any work at a national level to increase the responsibility of manufacturers and retailers, or separately advocate an increase in penalties for first offences?
Okay, thank you for the question. It's good to hear the recognition of the work and the partnership we have with the Heritage Partnership. It's a beautiful part of the county. And I do know, I'd like to acknowledge the work by PCC Ian Goodwin up there in partnership with the Heritage Coast. They've been working with the Area Action Partnership, I understand, to invest in binoculars to help us collect the evidence which follows from the presentation of what Kevin says around some of the challenges when we respond to these incidents. I think it's important at my level to set some expectations here in answering this question. So first and foremost, we do engage nationally. Endurance is a brand. We share the best practice and we approach for that practice. Secondly, the National Police Chief Council also engage nationally with key manufacturers around certainly safety factors and new machines coming in, e-scooters, etc. But you have to remember as well that a lot of the vehicles that come into this country are imported. And I think it's important just to finish with the point around the expectation around the punitive or the punishment, which I think is the last part of the question. We're not, as a constabulary, about to criminalise young people, you know, who are invariably often on these bikes, and especially those who are first-time offenders. So there's a real proportionate approach to understanding the circumstances around the offending. Again, that's touched on in the presentation. But be absolutely clear, if we find a pattern of behaviour in prolific offending, we work with the Naval Police team, we understand the community impact that this sort of behaviour has, and we record that and we present that to the court. So it's really important that people understand that we are not about to send people to jail for riding off-road bikes if it's their first offence, you know. So we will engage as we do as a force and have a proportionate response.
Thanks for that. And I think, again, it's all that intelligence, isn't it, of who's doing it, where they're doing it, where they live, and how we can identify those people who are maybe riding it and giving them that sort of support. And I think that would be, again, welcome and proportionate, as you say, for people who are driving illegally driven bikes as well. And I think the national picture is very, very important, as well as the NPCC. We've also got the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, where I'm deputy, and I think, again, that link is there at a national level to listen to the work of the operational officers and to feed that in through the political sphere. To address some of those challenges that you're encountering on a regular basis. Inspector Salter, can the management and deployment of Operation Endurance, the off-road team, be carried out more speedily?
Well, first of all, the Operation Endurance is happening all the time from the off in the background, as we've discussed. For example, as soon as a Section 59 warning notice is issued, that alerts our partners and they start their processes. So we are constantly building the intelligence and piecing information together and taking action with our partners to get the results. I think what this question is also directed at is when will we deploy the off-road bikes? And I appreciate that's what people want to say. I appreciate that's what sends out a strong message to the offenders. But as Nicola's already discussed, bike section are a very small team, so they have to be used efficiently and effectively. You know, they've got a full county to cover, which is vast, as you'll appreciate, and they've also got a lot of other duties to carry out. So before they go into a locality, we want an intelligence package for them. So they've got approximate times, they know potentially who's riding these bikes, where they're riding the bikes, to ensure that their time's used efficiently and effectively. We have tried the ad hoc approach, if you like, to see if they get results, and it just doesn't work. So please remember that the deployment of bikes is just a small tactic under the big Operation Endurance umbrella, and the most effective way, which we keep going on about, is the building of intelligence to piece that information together and act in slow time. And the weeks of actions that we've got, you know, a space of 5 days, in 1 week of action we seized over 15 bikes, and that was all through slow time working and building that community intelligence that we got and piecing it together and removing the bikes from the streets.
Thank you for that. And I think, again, you were saying about putting those pieces of the jigsaw together. One piece of information is valuable, but if you get multiple ones that sort of enhance that, it means that any activity is more likely to be successful. And I think it's just using that that information that this is what's happening, but sometimes you can't tell them until it's actually happened to get the success that you have. And I know the feedback I get is when you do have those successful operations and you report that, the public are very, very appreciative, but then they want more, don't they? And I think that's quite rightly, if you're being blighted by the off-road bikes, you do want to see action. But I think what you've explained there is sometimes we just need the information and the intelligence to make the response successful and the interventions to get the bikes off the roads and off the where they're being driven around our communities. Superintendent Ball, what more can be done to improve communication with the public regarding off-road bikes after they've reported to the force? I think that sort of goes back to what people do get frustrated, that they report things in and they don't see a response. So how do we improve that communication so those that are reporting in do get some information or feedback?
Okay, thank you for the question. Durham Constabulary is our style of policing is neighbourhood policing, and fundamental to that is our communication and crucially the engagement. So we do, and I am encouraging, and I think that's been the theme so far, we need people to ring in. So what that looks like in terms of the investment and the fact that we are grateful for that call is each policing area should have a PCSO, and PCSOs under the support of their supervision will review all antisocial behaviour calls that we receive, and we receive several hundred calls in totality every day, and many of those are antisocial behaviour. PCSO should then text the caller to say thank you for the call and set some expectations around that. So that's important at this level. Everybody should understand in this county, Durham and Darlington, there is a PCSO for your area, and I'd encourage people to learn who they are. The next step up in terms of the improvement of the feedback is we have Keep in the Know, which is our main engagement platform, and we are really keen for everybody to sign up to that. It really allows us to give very precise messaging to parish and particular ward level and even further, and certainly in the rural communities this is important. And then PACT is our primary platform for engagement. It's usually at sergeant inspector level, neighbourhood police inspector level. There's in areas. There's many more PACT platforms. And we encourage people to engage in that process where we can accept patterns of behaviour, or we take the feedback by the PACT forum, and then with the local authority and other partners, we start to do some problem solving. And then part of the PACT process is we have to feedback in the next meeting. And I know COVID's been challenging for all of us, so we've been very innovative about how we do that. So we moved away from face-to-face PACT. We are very much an inclusive force. We are looking at those groups that find it hard to engage with us, and do that through various unity and cohesion type groups as well. So there is a bottom-up approach around acknowledging the call, setting expectation, thanking the caller for the call by the text process, and obviously above that we have the Keeping the Note and the PACT process.
Thank you, and I think that point about management expectations, it's fantastic that the public actually take the time to ring in, but I like what you say, that loop of reporting back and to manage those expectations, I think is really important. And you know, I've got it in the police and crime plan that was recently launched, about making sure that everybody's aware of the PCSOs and the police officers within their areas. So I think that's a good tip that you've given there, so people know who they are. And I know from locally being signed up to Keep in the Know, a lot of the information that I get directly through the alert system for the area where I live, it's by the PCSOs as well. So it's a great opportunity if anybody who's watching this broadcast hasn't signed up to In the Know, I would really encourage them to do so, because that's a great way to keep up to date with the crime prevention tips, techniques, but also with your local neighbourhood teams as well. And as you say, that the pack meetings have gone from strength to strength, and I think the COVID has brought some challenges, but also innovations and opportunities with relation to engaging with members of the public. And I've seen how successful the online pack meetings are, Superintendent Ball, because sometimes people don't attend the meetings, but they do attend the online side. However, online's not for everybody, so I think having the opportunity to have the face-to-face is also equally important. But I think I've seen a lot more participation from local areas where there is that online resource as well. So thank you very much for that. This is another one for you, Superintendent Ball. Can data collecting systems be upgraded, as there seems to be a lag in collecting and then dispersing the information to stakeholders to assist with targeting of resources?
Okay, thanks for the question again. We, as a constabulary, we've got great data collection, you know, and certainly antisocial behaviour comes into to us in various ways. But what's important, perhaps, to framing this answer is it's not just our own data. It's the council's other agencies as well. Council in particular, as Nicola's alluded to, have got a really important role to play in all the various services and the eyes and ears on the ground to feed in. And people may not know, but we do have antisocial behaviour officers based with all the main neighbourhood policing teams. And the expectation from us as senior managers is that's collated and you know, action within 24 hours. So what should happen is an assessment of that information should provide the right response. So if we're starting to get calls into the council via their systems, and our systems are saying the same, there's really incumbent that the local policing team, with our support, with the road policing if appropriate, respond to that. So the systems are pretty good, and we know through your priorities and obviously from our focus as a force that we need, in terms of legitimacy, accept the information, ensure that we are dealing with that information promptly and effectively. I won't go into the various mechanisms and problem solving we do on top of that, but actually Operation Endurance is one of the outcomes from how we recognise that actually on our own it's not just police systems that fixes the issue. So yeah, we do get the information. I'm more than happy with our data systems of the first class. It's the speed of that processing, and my commitment is that should be done within 24 hours.
Oh, thanks, sir. And I think that's very reassuring. But as you mentioned, we want as much of the data that's gone into other organisations and partners to be collated. So I think that's an important way forward. But I think it's reassuring that we want to use that information as quickly as we possibly can. Inspector Salter, could the service be more proactive in promoting good news stories around off-road bikes, including intelligence gathering and highlighting success in seizure?
Absolutely. This is something that we've already discussed. We fully agree the public deserve to know, after all, they're the ones that are giving us the valuable information and intelligence that gets the results. And we know it's a two-way thing. The more that we tell you about our success, you're more inclined to give us that information and intelligence. Our cops are very good at doing the job. They're very good at getting results. They're very good at catching the bad people. But at times they can be quite modest with regards to the job, and they don't like to advertise the successes. They do just see it as doing the job. The media team here at Durham is exceptional, and we do have a media strategy in place for this. However, the media teams rely on the cops telling them about the successes that they have. An example how we know this works, and we've had discussions since, was the one of the enforcement weeks we had down Darlington, which you've already spoke about the lockup which we found. Now, I'll admittedly say that the offenders are one step ahead of us. Throughout that week, we were looking for a number of bikes which we couldn't get hold of, and we just couldn't work out where they'd been stored. But throughout that week, we advertised the work that we did on social media, all the seizures that we got. And we found the more we put out there, the more information came back into us. So much so that we managed to find out where these bikes were being stored, and it happened to be in a local lockup. The offenders were all paying so much per month together. They were all chipping in and thought they were one step ahead of the game, keeping the bikes away from us. But through the community intelligence that came in, we located it, we used our powers of entry, and we seized the bikes. So we know it works. We've already had meetings with our media teams, and there is a plan in place moving forward to make sure that we get everything out there. Like I said, we are genuinely good with this, but it's, you know, we can always, everyone can always improve.
Thank you for that. And again, we've said this before. A lot of people think that the police officers and the teams do this all themselves, and they don't give credit to themselves as the members of the public of actually doing the most important thing, is that's to make the call and to share the concerns about or suspicions about things that are in the area. And like you said, good intelligence really makes us as a force very, very successful. And I think those, like you said, very, very modest. But it does make a difference when I go around the community, when you're highlighting those things that the officers have been doing. It's their day-to-day job, and sometimes they don't, they just get on and do it. But I think obviously for the media team, they do need those stories. And I think where we, you know, takes us right back to the Pelian principles, isn't it? The police are the public are the police. And if you put that information out there on social media, I've seen it by the impact it makes by people feeling that they're valued and you want them to ring in. And as that week, as you've discussed there, was very, very successful, and it actually really paid off. That relationship and that partnership between the police and the public are key. So I think it's something that we can support, and I know I'm keen in my office to support what the force does and the information that we get out there, and encouraging the public to continue to get that intelligence into us, or via Crime Stoppers, as we've said. Another one, Inspector Salter, can laws be utilised for enforcement? Can other laws be utilised for enforcement, as the current traffic offences do not seem sufficient to deter illegal use? For example, no licence insurance, trespassing and criminal damage.
Well, yes, other laws can be used, absolutely. This is what Operation Endurance is all about, which is what you've just sort of heard from Nicola's presentation. We understand and know how this impacts on members of the public, and we obviously the offenders that are doing it know it's wrong. So we're not going to go lightly on them. If you're riding an off-road bike illegally within County Durham or Darlington, then expect a robust approach to our partner agency working. Just some of the things that we're doing to try and be robust, as you've already heard, but making the best use of all of our powers to make it difficult for offenders to get the bike back. You've already heard about the Operation Takeaway Power, and them having to get it insured and having to get a driving licence. We've talked about the Section 59 warning signs, where we can place them in strategic locations that are problematic to us, and that takes away the first warning, so we can seize bikes straight away and go on to use our powers of entry. We've got the garage watch scheme, which Nicola's talked about, where we're working with fire and trading standards, prevents people from buying fuel, makes it more difficult, and if they are buying fuel from the petrol stations, they're going to have to identify themselves, which all helps our intelligence picture. And again, utilising our partners' powers and legislation to ensure that we take the most appropriate course of action with each individual. So rest assured, we will be robust in our approach. We will use our own powers, and we will use the powers of our partner agencies. But please, in certain circumstances, there is a need for educational intervention. So I think it's important for me to point that out. The last thing we want to be doing is criminalising children, as the superintendent alluded to. There's you know, we've got different ways and means to deal with a child, and we want to give them as much chance as possible. Maybe a different route for the parent if they're allowing the child to ride these bikes, but where possible and where circumstances dictate, we will be robust as possible.
Thank you, and I think it's as you alluded to. I think the presentation where we talk about different tools and powers for our partner agencies is going to be really critical to address the issue. So I think that's a really good one to say how we can go forward and how we do use other tools and powers for enforcement as well. So this brings me on to the final question, which is I want to address to Superintendent Ball, which is what priority is given to calls made to 101 around off-road bikes, and how does this impact on how the police respond to the issue?
Oh, thanks again for the question. We receive in the order of several hundred calls into our control room every day. Often that looks like about 500 incidents or so, give or take. And as everybody would expect, we have to prioritise those based on risk. So there is a very robust risk assessment which is being tested by Her Majesty's Inspectorate. You know, we quality assure that process, etc. So as you'd understand, and I'm sure our public understand, we get to everything as quickly as we would like to. But there is a risk assessment process. So, I mean, the theme from this last hour and a half is please keep ringing in, because as much as the response may not be what you want, we should politely temper expectation, because we do want you to ring in. And actually, as we've talked about, as I say, for the last 90 minutes or so, hopefully there's an understanding now that your call is a vital jigsaw piece in a wider puzzle to allow us to effectively and efficiently deal with these issues. Because I wouldn't like an off-road bike or a quad bike racing around my streets or around my parents' streets, etc. And I'd expect the police to do something about it. But it's important that we set expectations on this, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think that's always a question that people do ask. And I think again Nicola picked up on a presentation about, you know, if it's not an issue that's occurring and you just want to give intelligence, you can make it at a different time and get the information in there. But the most important message, as you've said, Superintendent Ball, is actually just getting that call through, because we don't want to lose any bits of intelligence that the community have. So I think that's a very, very strong message on which to end the accountability questions. I just want to ask if George, you want to come in before I bring to the conclusion.
Yeah, thank you, Joy. Thanks to the team. I think they have demonstrated to everybody couple of things: the seriousness and the response to this issue that we've developed over a number of years. I'm hoping as a result of it, people are better informed in relation to the various ways in which we seek to tackle the issues, and are reassured that this is something that we do take seriously, that we do recognise is part of a quality of life issue that affects people and can have a detrimental effect on them if it's not tackled. And we've provided opportunities and signposted people in terms of how they can get involved, both in relation to this issue, but also into wider engagement with local PCSOs and neighbourhood teams, so that people know what's going on in their local community. But thanks to the team for the comprehensive presentation.
Thanks, Jo. And as I said, I think it's so valuable, because this is our intelligence, isn't it, to the public about how we deal with and how we are dealing with this issue, which is a big issue for members of the public. So it's a really good way. It's another method. It's just one of the methods to get that information out. But I think I've found it very, very interesting and useful, and particularly to get the questions of the public to the team who are delivering for us and responding to the community. So really this brings me to the end of our second accountability meeting, and I do hope that the presentation delivered and the questions that have followed have been useful. I strongly support the action taken by Durham Constabulary and Operation Endurance to pursue those responsible and ultimately seizing and crushing the vehicles of persistent offenders. As your PCC, I will continue to give the police my total support in ridding our communities of this antisocial menace and nuisance. It's very important that members of the public report local intelligence and evidence to enable officers to pursue and prosecute those responsible. Vehicle and rider information that help the police may include the type of vehicle, the colour, symbols, scratches and damage, where the vehicle was spotted and where it is stored. Operation Endurance presentation included how these incidents can be reported via 101 live chat or anonymously through Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. On a final note, as we've touched upon in the earlier presentation, I'm really delighted to hear that Operation Endurance has received National Problem Solving Award and recognition for the work it's doing across County Durham and Darlington, and it has been shortlisted, and I really hope that it does the force in our support when it gets presented at the prestigious International Goldstein Problem Solving Awards, and I wish the team well, and I hope it's a successful trip. The problem solving approach, as we've highlighted today and also within the police and crime plan, continues in the partnership with Durham Constabulary, local authorities and our communities to catch those individuals who blight our community with this type of antisocial behaviour. So can I thank everybody who's taken their time on the call this morning and who's presented, particularly the Chief Constable and her team for their participation, and every member of the public who has shared their questions with me. Together we will make the communities of County Durham and Darlington safer, stronger and more resilient to crime and antisocial behaviour. I think it's appropriate at this point to wish everyone a very happy Christmas and a safe, secure and healthy New Year. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.